Okay, so I have an offer for y'all. This is your time, so we can go any way you want. So I can tell you stories of things that are happening that I'm excited about, or we can talk about how to meet your community leaders and start working with your community leaders here in your community area. We can talk about how to pray for your community leaders, or something else. A hybrid. All right. So I'll tell stories, you ask questions, and I'll answer your questions. Does that sound good?
What about?
Oh, you're getting strategic on me. I see it come. Oh, and I owe you an apology. There was a man with a tie on. I am so sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
So you want to hear a funny story about me and ties? I don't like ties. I've never liked ties. There is a church in this conference that has on their church books a vote of the church board that says that the pastor will at least wear a tie on Communion Sabbath. And that's because of me. So, yeah.
What was this?
That would be telling. We'll just say that I had my head deaconess, who was the dearest, sweetest. She was Filipino, and it just killed her when I would show up without a tie, because that felt so disrespectful to her from her culture. So the board voted. I wore a tie. All right, you were come up with a plan for our time. I could see your wheels turning.
Tell us a story, then let's move on.
Okay.
How to connect with community.
Okay, I can jump to, I'll change PowerPoints, that's fine. I've got lots of story pictures in this slide deck, so I'm going to start here. Why don't we pray, and then we'll do some stories. Father, thank you for the chance to just kind of talk and dream about what is possible here in Goldendale. And Lord, every time I walk into this sanctuary, I'm just reminded of how good it is to be surrounded by these beautiful views out these giant windows. What a blessing to live here and be able to worship in this space. God, I love the spirit in this church and their desire to connect with the people around them and share the hope and the joy that they experience. And so we just ask that our time together will inspire them to that end. In Jesus' name, amen. So, is this too loud for y'all? Yes, ma'am. I'm with you. Yeah. Anything we can do to call that jewelry makes me very happy. So, yes. All right. Hey, we grew. It's amazing. When you pray, look what happens. People appear. It's awesome. So you heard me talk about Tico this morning. This picture behind me is, I'm going to get up here where I can look at you and my picture at the same time. So this picture is actually kind of a landmark as you drive into Tico, Washington from the north. This bridge used to be a railroad trestle. Now it's a rails to trails trail up there. But you're just coming into town. And if you're coming into town this way, Tico is right on the Washington-Idaho border. So you're just looking kind of across into Idaho. It's about 5-6 miles past town to the east, and you're in Idaho. So it's real close. Tico is one of these little towns. You've got them over here, too, that is just equidistant to everywhere and close to nowhere. So they're 45 minutes to Spokane, or Moscow Pullman, or Colfax. That's kind of their world. Or Coeur d'Alene, sounds like, as well. So anyway, that's Tico. Okay, now we got to see if I can get my clicker to function. No, it's Tekoa, just like the Old Testament Tekoa. Yeah. So, oh, by the way, that's my family. So, my oldest son is a freshman at Walla Walla. The one in the middle, who is the middleist, is a sophomore at UCA. And my youngest is a 7th grader across the road at Upper Columbia Academy Elementary. And my beautiful bride, who is a mental health therapist and practices on campus at UCA. So that's us, and that's where we live. So that's our field. This is from a message, but I'm just going to tell you stories. So this story is super fun. So in this picture, the gentleman, so I walked into town hall 2 years ago, I guess. 2 years ago, something like that. Our little town near us, we live about 2 miles outside of town. Our nearest neighbor is over a mile away from us in any direction, which is just how I like it. But my wife saw on our community Facebook group, which, by the way, if you're not a part of the Goldendale Community Facebook group, you need to be. That's where you get a feel of what's going on in a community. So anytime I start targeting a community for serving and projects, I join their Facebook group, because that's where you find out. That's how you find out what the political climate is. And by that, I don't mean Republican or Democrat. I mean, are they fighting or are they happy? There are communities very close to me that desperately need my help. And we're not going there right now because they're politically a mess. They're not stable enough for us to have a good partnership and be able to help them. So we drive right through on our way to Tico. So anyway, the town posted on Facebook a couple years ago. They said, hey, we're looking for ideas for a grant for our community. And my wife said, hey, you need to go talk to Cheryl at Town Hall about this. Well, it just happened. I'd been working on an idea all winter long. And so I walked into our town hall and I said, hey, Cheryl, tell me more about this grant. And I said, is this a $2,500, or I said, is it a $500 or a $50,000 grant? What are we looking at? And she says, well, probably 25,000. That's pretty average, what we've gotten from this foundation in the past. I went, okay. And so we talked about the needs of the community. And I said, well, I have an idea. What if we created a food co-op to teach people here how to garden, how to harvest, how to preserve, and how to cook with what they grew, and cut their grocery bill and increase the nutrients of the food they're eating, so their community health goes up. We build community relationships. And she looked at me and she said, send me a proposal. So I'm heading to a Pathfinder event right after I walk out of her office. And so when I get there, I have a little time, so and I fire off an email. And the next thing I hear from her is, I need you to come to town council. And so I went to the town council and I made a presentation, and they're like, oh, this is great. And so the town council said, that's our thing. You guys apply for the grant. So we got a $10,000 grant. I think it was $10,000. Anyway, $10,000 grant to the town, not to me, to the town, to do a food co-op. And in this picture, our mayor is right there. Our clerk, right there. That's me beside Cheryl. And all of these people, they're the only Seventh-day Adventist in this picture is me. All those people are from the community. They're our community leaders. But guess where they are? They're on campus at Upper Columbia Academy. Because Upper Columbia Academy has a farm program, and they hosted 2 of our workshops that we did for the food co-op. And we had tons of people walk on campus who've never been on campus at our school. They just drive by and go, well, I wonder what those crazy people are up to. They came on campus, and we had a couple. One guy walked into the greenhouse for our seed starting workshop, and he kind of grinned, and he's like, man, they didn't have this when I went to school here. And I looked at him. I went, you went to UCA? He works for the town and is completely disconnected from the church. You never know what you find when you start serving. Okay. We're looking for pictures for stories. This is my political detour. I will say this. The reason we talk about politics in this message a little bit is that since 2016, tell me if you think differently, I think something has changed in our country. Before maybe 2015, but before that campaign cycle, I don't remember the term fake news, right? Did it go back to there? All right. But what has happened is that I feel like we as a country have become cynical about the idea that anything is true, right? And so the way we respond to that is that we have started getting our information from trusted sources. And this is true inside the church and outside the church. But here's the kicker. What's a trusted source? Bingo. Yep. A trusted source is anybody I agree with. Okay? So how does the church get a hearing in this climate? That's the challenge. Well, the way around, because by the way, it wasn't that different in Jesus' day. If you didn't know, the Pharisees and Sadducees weren't just terms. They were literally like political parties within the church. They believed differently, and they believed it so strongly, they like hated each other, okay? So it was a lot like our political culture. And Jesus got around that by just doing Ministry of Healing 143. Here we go. This is it. You guys have you guys heard this quoted to you by our conference president or anybody? Good. So I underline all the parts because I grew up Adventist. How many of you grew up Adventist? Okay, most all, sort of, kind of. Okay. Growing up Adventist, I grew up in a culture that looked at Ministry of Healing. If they even knew this passage existed, we looked at it and we went, oh, relationship takes a lot of time, right? And it's messy. And we don't have time because time is short. So we just skipped to the last step because time was short. But here's what she says. Christ's method alone will give true success in reaching the people. The Savior, what? Mingled. All right, right there, Adventists are in trouble, right? Because our community, we mingle really well with ourselves. But our communities, they plan everything in town on Sabbath, right? And the ball games are on Friday night. And our kids don't go to the public school because we have a church school. When I moved out to where we live in our little farm, our next door neighbor, a mile away, her husband was the superintendent of schools at Liberty School District, the public school district in our area. And neat Christian family. And we started getting acquainted, and everybody felt like they knew me because I was on the radio in Spokane for about 13 years. They're like, oh, are you Chaplain Richie from the Adventist radio station? And so one day I'm talking with my neighbor lady, and she says, Richie, at that time it was Positive Life Radio. Now it's Shine up in Spokane. But she's like, is Positive Life Radio run by the Seventh-day Adventists? I said, yeah. She said, are you a Seventh-day Adventist? I said, yes, I am. And then she said something that just broke my heart. She said, oh, we know you Adventists. You pretty much keep to yourselves. And I'm like, oh, I don't like how that feels. But she's not wrong, right? We got our own schools right down the road from Liberty, got our own churches. We don't go to the parades and the socials because they're on Sabbath, Friday night. And as I have discovered in my community, even on the times when it's on a Monday, Memorial Day, we don't show up. It's just not our habit. So we struggle to mingle, not all, but many. And our family, after she said that, Timmy and I talked, and we're like, you know what? We're going to be a one-family committee to change that in this community. And this is a community where we live, just 2 miles down the road from us, that has 2 parks in their little town. Both of those parks are named after Seventh-day Adventist physicians, right? So we have a rich heritage in this town, and yet, years after these folks have passed away, our neighbors are saying, oh, we know you guys. You pretty well keep to yourselves. So Christ mingled with men as one who desired their good, and then he did what? Showed sympathy. Now, if we're going to show sympathy, what do you have to know and be to show sympathy to people? You got to be with them, right? You got to actually know what's going on in their life. So there's a church in our conference that they have an amazing ministry that is all about sympathy. They call it the Giving Box Ministry. So they've got a church school like you guys do, and they have some guys that are handy. And some years ago, they built a little shop so they could teach shop classes at their church school. And in that shop, they started building little wooden boxes, like these wooden crates that you can get for, I don't know, what do they cost at Joann's or Hobby Lobby. They started building these little wooden boxes. And they said, we could fill these up with, neat stuff. And then when we find out somebody's lost a loved one in the community, we could just show up and give them a giving box. And so now they have a full ministry in their church, and all that ministry does is watch the obituaries in the newspaper and listen to anybody in town. And if somebody loses a loved one, the Seventh-day Adventist Church is at their door that week with a giving box and a card and just say, we're so sorry about your loss. Just want to let you know you're loved and we're praying for you. That is showing sympathy. It's not the only way, but it's a way. So Jesus showed sympathy, but he had to mingle, right, to build those relationships, because then he knows people, and then he can show sympathy and show that he cares. He mingled with men as one who desired their good. We want the best for you, right? I have a friend, pastor in our conference. He was in the Walla Walla Valley, and the Walla Walla Valley had an issue in College Place, and that was that there was not a public school option in College Place. It was Wah High, Wah, 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 whatever, over in Walla Walla, and all the College Place kids were being bused to Walla Walla. And part of the problem that they had with getting a public school in College Place was the Seventh-day Adventists. Because every time the idea came up for a vote, the Adventists didn't want to pay taxes for a school they were never going to use, and they voted it down. So my friend, pastor, he heard about this, and he was getting involved with his community, and some of the town leaders came to him, and they said, Pastor, could you help us? We really need to have our own school in our community, and you Adventists are shooting us down every time. Can you help? And he's like, yeah. And he went to bat with our Adventist community and said, hey, we need to get behind this. Why? Because we desire the best for our community kids, right? We want them to have access to a good, high-quality public school in their community. And he got behind it, and he got enough Adventists to support it. And if you drive into College Place today, there's a beautiful public school right there on the main drag, like if you're going down to Milton Freewater. And next time you drive by, you just look at that and say, that school exists because of a Seventh-day Adventist pastor, because it's true. And he would never say it quite that boldly, but I know that's the case. And I have Adventist friends who are teaching there and loving it, and the kids love them. He showed his sympathy for them. He ministered to their needs. So now we're talking about what can we do, right? So I'm going to show you some pictures here in a little bit, but here's one of the things I'm learning. We often think about what do we do in a disaster, okay? So how many of you have seen the images from North Carolina and Tennessee? Oh, it's overwhelming, right? It's also not close enough that most of us can do anything about it except send money to Red Cross or ACS, right? But there's all kinds of little personal disasters happening within 20 minutes of where we're sitting this afternoon. And as we get to know people, we're going to find opportunities. Just like you heard me talk about Laura Lee's roof, I'm going to show you a picture of her roof here in a second. So he ministered to their needs, and what does that do? When you start showing sympathy and helping people, you win their confidence. That's what Jesus was doing. And so he won their confidence, and then he bade them follow me, right? And that's why those of you that have been talking with me about Serve One More funding, Serve One More dollars do not go to anything that involves a gospel presentation. The moment you whip out your glow track, say, can I pray with you? Or, hey, here's a handbill for 28 nights of Friendly Beasts from Revelation. That is not a Serve One More project. That's now evangelism funding, right? Because now we've moved from soil prepper. How many gardeners do I have? Any? No, nobody gardens. Okay, thank you. All right. So any farmers? Do we have any farmers here? You're surrounded by farmers. Okay. I'm a gardener and surrounded by farmers. So in seminary, when we talk about the cycle of evangelism, it often began with a seed going in the soil. But anybody who gardens knows that's not actually where it begins, right? It begins with soil preparation. Thank you. And so Serve One More funds are all about soil preparation. As soon as we pull out the glow tract or any of those things, I'm just picking on that as an example that we all understand. Now we've moved into seed planting, right? And that's a function of our evangelism funding. So that's how we've kind of divided it as you think about it. Notice this last little bit. She says this is the next paragraph in Ministry of Healing. There's a need of coming close to the people by personal effort. And I love this. If less time were given to sermonizing, thanks, yep, but it's actually true. I went to a little church in the northeast corner of our conference a few years ago, and I was meeting with the outreach team one weeknight, and they said, we just want some ideas on connecting better with our community. And I felt impressed to ask a question. I said, well, why don't you tell me what you're doing? This is a little tiny church, much smaller than yours. And they said, well, we do 2 vacation Bible schools a year, and we have like 100 kids coming to each. 100. You track 100. And we open up our church for Halloween. I went, you do what? Because I had some presuppositions about this church. And I'm like, they're way too conservative. They would never. No, we open up our church on Halloween. We have like 130 people come through. I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, it's great. They love it. And I'm like, okay. And then they kept going on talking about what they're doing. And then their heads kind of slumped and they said, but nobody's asked for Bible studies. And nobody's come to church. And I looked at them and I said, oh, well, that's easy. And they went, what? I said, you just need to keep making contacts until you know their names and they know yours. And then you're going to have opportunities to lead people to Christ. They're like, oh, but we live a long ways from the church. We live way out in the mountains. It's 45 minutes. It's hard for us to get here once a week. It's hard to do more. And I said, well, okay, don't throw me out. Don't get me fired. But what if you did a 1-year experiment as a church? And what if you just quit doing church like you're used to doing church, and you took that time and energy to spend time planning and serving and connecting with your community for a year and see what happens? They went, oh. They didn't throw me out. I don't think they did what I suggested either. But that's what she's saying. If less time were given to sermonizing and more time were spent in personal ministry, greater results would be seen. And then she goes through a list. And notice what she says. Go down to the very bottom. Accompanied by the power of persuasion, the power of prayer, the power of love, the love of God, this work will not, cannot be without fruit. That's a kind of take it to the bank promise from Ellen White right there. So that fires me up. Okay. Here's some things. How many of you have heard about Malden, Washington, and what Pathfinders did there after the fire? Not just Pathfinders. We got Hope Task Force from UCA involved. The Farmington Adventist Church has been involved. Adventist Community Services has been involved in Malden. All kinds of stuff there. Oh, we're going to go. Here, let me see if I can get the whole list up for you. Nope, go back. Here's one thing. I asked a few of you at lunch. To make a real impact in your community, your church family needs to start building relationships with these people. Okay? I was at a, Right? So, no one of you in this room needs to know all those, but it would be good if in a year from now, if I came back and ran this list up, if somebody could raise their hand for each one of these categories and say, oh yeah, I know this person. And especially, there's two categories here, well, 3. I really think the town clerk, what I've learned so far in our small rural towns, the town clerk is the knower of everything for your town, right? So if you build a relationship with them, they are a great resource to help you know where there's a need that you can meet or partners that you should be working with. The other one, I know this makes some people nervous, and when you have a pastor, this would be a good role for them too, to build relationships with the pastors of your community churches. So they know you and you know them and you're working together. And then the last one is public school leaders. So I went to a training last spring by a foundation that gives millions and millions of dollars to communities across our conference territory. And they were talking, they brought in some guest presenters, and it was like a 2 or 3 day training. And one of the things they said that really caught my attention, coming from an Adventist background, they said the public school is the hub of the community. And I went, oh, well, that's a problem because we're not there at all, right? More and more we have kids in public school, but we want to support our church school. But if the public school is the hub of the community, and I've thought about it a lot since, and I've watched in my own community and others, and it's true. It really is. Like, that's where people socialize. It's public school, the bar. I choose the ball game. But, people hang out at ball games. They go to programs, fundraisers, all those things. And the public school is the hub of the community. They also know, think about this, those teachers, just like your teacher, they know the kids that are coming from a difficult situation, families that need help, right? So those public school teams, the teachers and staff, They've got their fingers on what's going on at a family level in your community in a way that nobody else does. So becoming friends with them is an amazing option. We have a church in Spokane that has been working with the public school near them for years, and they have a tradition. Every year, they make up gift baskets for all the teachers in their public school district. Every single one. Everybody gets a basket from the church every year. And they have started an after-school program because the public school said, we desperately need STEM being taught to our kids in these grades after school. And so they set it up. They bought a building. They bought it, got all the curriculum, and they've been running this amazing after-school STEM program. The public school bus drops the kids off at the church program every week. And when COVID hit, the public school had to shut their district down. They came to the Adventists and said, we have these kids who come from really poor families. They don't have a computer. They don't have a tablet. They're sitting at home by themselves because mom and dad have to go to work, and they can't even log into a class. Can you help? Because they knew we had a computer lab in our STEM teaching building. And so we opened up our STEM building, socially distanced, and provided these kids with access to the internet during the shutdown. And that all happened because we had a relationship with the public school. Show them we care. We can do that all kinds of practical ways. These kids are part of Hope Task Force at UCA. Hope Task Force, Upper Columbia Academy, has a long-standing tradition. It's probably coming up on 20-plus years. 4 times a year, they shut school down for an entire day, and all the staff, all the students, well, most of the students, because the village students, you can't, drag them out of bed and force them to come, but all the dorm students and some of the village students go out and serve in the community. These guys were helping assemble raised bed units, which we gave away to co-op members in our food co-op. So that was paid for by a grant. Looking for other pictures. So that picture there on the top is Pathfinders restoring. Were you helping with this? I don't know. St. Mary's, some of you guys were in there on that one. Restoring the flower beds. When the fire burned through Malden, it burned over this little flower bed that these kids and staff are around. It burned one leg of that signpost. And when we went down there for the first time and met the mayor and the clerk and said, what can we do to help? She walked over to this little flower bed that was like 3 or 4 feet wide by 6 feet long. She says, could you fix this? And I looked at her and I said, okay. Let me just explain something. I said, when we come, there will be hundreds of us. You need to think bigger. She went, And when we came, there was a couple hundred of us. But yeah, St. Mary's and I don't remember who else was in there. Fix that. Do you remember who it was? Are you in the picture? You're famous. All right. Another thing, when Malden burned, the Pathfinder Club closest to Malden had already said, you know what, this year, this was during COVID, so 4 and a bit years ago is when Malden burned, and our Pathfinder Club there in Spangle had already said at the beginning of the school year, you know what, we're just going to do things different this year. So every week when we get together, we're either going to serve our community, train to serve our community, or if we can't serve or train, we're going to do honors. We never had a week the entire year that we weren't able to serve or train. And we earned a bunch of honors in the process. So we made a decision. Whenever the county or the town calls and says we have a need, we'd say yes. So you see these kids on the left here? We got a call from the county. They said, we have all these clothing donations that have come in for victims of the fire, but we don't have anything to hang them on. Could you build us clothing racks? And I said, yes. I've never built a clothing rack. I had no idea how to build a clothing rack, but I knew people who know stuff. And these kids built those clothing racks, and they're pretty strong. You can see because they're hanging on them. The picture on the right, that happened at camp meeting this summer. No guilt for those of you that didn't come. Down in Tika, this house, nobody had seen the front of that house in 30 years. A neighbor stopped by and says, man, I haven't seen that in 30 years. And it was so bad when we saw it. We're like, man, we maybe should put the bushes back up. Yeah, that would be an extreme home makeover, except I think the owners have had to move. One passed away since then. This lady 3 weeks ago, Hope Task Force rolled in. You couldn't even see this sidewalk. The hedges were so big on both sides of where I'm standing when I took this picture. And I think they hauled about 5 dump truck loads of shrubs away from her yard alone. And we had about 6 of those going that day. We had 4 dump trucks, dump trailers or trailers running, just going full tilt, picking up all around town. Yeah, there they are cleaning out that same lady's house, but loading up a bunch of limbs and gunk. Totally transformed. I'm moving through. There it is. That's Laura Lee's roof. See how bad that is? So Laura Lee's going to have a new roof. Right now they're debating whether that's happening still this fall or next spring. I'm voting for next spring. Either way, she's going to be dry this winter because we're going to get it tarped and taken care of, so she'll be dry. But she'll have a new roof paid for by people who expect nothing in return. There you go. Okay. What was the other one you said you wanted to hear? You wanted to talk about community leaders? Yeah. Okay. Any questions? That was flying. I'm doing all the talking. Any questions you have for me here? Good question. Okay. How do you get it started is the question. So my pastor he's got experience doing this. His previous church in a different conference, they have done all kinds of huge projects. He also has a background as a contractor. So if you got some people, I know you got some people here that do Maranatha, so they got some skills, and you probably got others here in your church as well. And think about it bigger than your church. Here's what we're learning as we're getting into this. The people that you are most likely to draw into your church as you go out and serve are not the people you're serving. It's the people from the community that you invite to serve with you. Right? So you may not have all the trade skills you need for a project, but you may know somebody in town who does, who would love to help and say, hey, we're doing this thing, right? So the way you get it started, what my pastor is doing, he's like, we need to find somebody that wants to lead this ministry. And then we're going to have, just we're having a meeting after potluck, anybody that's interested in being a part of this ministry, and then just kind of see how much interest there is, get names and numbers, and then say, all right, what kind of skills do we have? What kind of projects are we excited about tackling? And it doesn't have to be horribly complicated. It could be, I do think, though, that if you have a team, even if it's 3 or 4 or 5, that's like, yeah, we'll be a part of that, then you at least know you've got a core to get something done, right? And so then it's a matter of like what projects the Lord drops in your lap. As far as getting funding from the conference, I forgot to write it down and hand it to you. I'm sorry. I was going to give that to you at lunch. I forgot to give you my email address. You want to enter it into your phone since you got it in your hand right now? Tell me when you're ready. Richie B, R-I-C-H-I-E, B as in boy, at uccsda.org. Just send me an email. I'll send you a link. So there's an application. Richie B, R-I-C-H-I-E, B as in boy, no spaces, at uccsda.org. So if you send me an email, I'll send you the link. The application, so the link opens up an online application form, right? And the application has to come, any of you can submit it, but it has to be voted by your church board or your school board if it comes from your school, okay? So, and your school can apply for a Serve One More project, and your church can apply for a separate Serve One More project. So hear me well. Take advantage of that. You can double dip, and we want you to. Okay. So then once you guys kind of have an idea of what you want to do, then you can start thinking about a project and some follow-up steps. We call them bridge events, and the bridge events are really important. So we're not. I always go, so our president likes to tell the story about the free oil changes for single moms, right? Okay, have you heard him talk about this? It's a great idea. We got tons of churches doing it because he's talked about it everywhere. So let's say you guys decide, boy, we got a lot of single moms in Goldendale, and they're really struggling to maintain their cars. Yeah, and you do, yeah, huh? You do the free oil change? You have done it? Okay. So perfect. Then you already kind of have a sense of what, so let's use that as a project idea because then you already know what we're talking about. So let's say you do the free oil change and you're submitting an application for funding and you say, we want to do the free oil change for single moms. We're going to do it on this date. We think we're going to serve this many moms. So it's going to cost us this much for filters, this much for oil, this much for cleaning supplies, banners, signage, whatever, okay? And so you put that all into your budget in your application. And then our application is going to ask you, what are your bridge events? So the idea with the bridge event is we don't change mom's oil and then say, hey, so glad we could change your oil. We've got 28 nights of beasts and black helicopters coming up next week. We'd love to have you come. Nope, too big a jump, right? So what we do is we say we want to build friends. So now we know your name, and we say, Bridget, we're just so glad that we could help you and change your oil and hang out a little bit. But when we finish cleaning the inside of her car, on her windshield, we hang a little door knocker that says, hey, you're invited to a women's tea 10 days from now. We'd love to have you join us. No strings attached. We're still not moving. We're not doing anything spiritual. We're just saying, let's keep being friends and getting to know each other, right? So those are bridge events. And we're really, as we're looking at your bridge events, we want to make sure we're not taking the relationship too far too fast, right? So we're not trying to get them into the church or the baptismal tank. We're just building friends. So whatever, and it needs to connect. So if it's for single moms and your bridge event is, I know it's Goldendale, hey, we're all going shooting 2 Sundays from now. No, probably not for single moms, right? There's probably not there. Maybe for a few. But so it needs to be consistent with the target crowd of the event. So you plan your event and your budget, your bridge event. So let's say you're doing a women's tea. You're like, all right, we're going to go someplace nice, and there's a little, I don't know, Airbnb in town that we can rent for $180 and another $300 for food and paper this and foo-foo and gifts and whatever, right? Put that all in the budget. Say, all right, let's say I'm going to do round numbers because I'm a lazy mathematician. Let's say your event and bridge events cost $10,000, a nice round number. So we've said that we will fund up to 70%. So we would do as much as $7,000, but it always makes us happy when we get applications and the church says, "Oh, we went and talked to this business in town and they donated this much, and and this other one donated this much, and so our total cost is $10,000, but we're only asking for $5,000 because we got the other $2,500 covered, right?" So you get all that together, submit the application, and then it goes to a committee, of course, because that's what we do. And the committee looks at it, and then they'll either say, "Nope, that's a terrible idea," which we never say, or they'll say, "Well, we need a little more information," which we're trying to make our application better, so we don't have to do that as much. Or we'll say, "That's a great idea. The check's in the mail." And then what we want after that is we want pictures and video from you. And a date. Tell us when you're doing your free oil change. Do you have a young person that knows how to run a smartphone, can get some pictures, video clips, whatever, and upload them to this link, right? So does that answer your question? Yeah, a long, wordy answer for a short question. Any other questions? Depends. What's the turnaround? You're talking about from when you submit the application to when typically 2 or 3 weeks. Within 3 weeks, typically. I sadly just discovered that somebody had turned in an application and I hadn't seen an email saying that I got a new application, so it's been sitting there. So our committee's meeting next week and we'll process. I think we've got 4, but we're pretty quick. And we typically, in one day, and now I have a tip sheet too that I'm sending out to churches along with the application. So if you follow the tip sheet in how you do your application, you're probably not going to have us asking for more information. Well, you'll have given it everything we need. So our turnarounds are going to get shorter, but basically it comes down to the conference president's schedule because he's gone so much and he's on the committee. So, yeah. Yeah, no, good question. So one of our Spanish churches is doing a pretty neat thing where they're reaching out to migrant families to help them acclimate to their new American community. And they're not asking, are you here legally or illegally? They're just new, and it's like, here's how you get your kid in school, and here's how you, anyway. So that's kind of a cool one. What are some of the others that I'm looking at? Our schools are doing some creative ones. I've got another church that's turned in a pretty big request, and they're doing the oil change plus because they've got a mechanic that is willing to take lead and mentor some younger men. And so they're like, look, we got families that they need their oil changed, but they also need their wipers changed, their brakes fixed, some of the lower end, but more complicated than most people could do themselves. What else? We've had a lot of oil changes. We have. I'm just thinking through some of the others. Yep. Yeah, we had a church turn in a request to do a community garden, and their church is located even further away from their town than yours is. Yours is kind of on the edge. Theirs is like you leave town, drive a while, and then there's the church. And so I wasn't really thrilled until I read in the application our community food or our community. Our town's community garden closed, and community leaders asked us if we would start one. And I went, oh, they've already got support. And then I'm reading through their budget, and they're like, oh, the building supply center is donating this, and this contractor's willing to donate this, and we're donating the land. And anyway, so that made it a win because they had actual community buy-in. So community gardening has been really popular lately. And then others are doing health-related things, might be... I don't know if you can do like depression recovery. Nedley really goes into the faith part of that, and it's good. I've personally facilitated a bunch of those, but there's other health related things. However, what I'm finding is that the churches sometimes they get really excited about some health thing, whatever it is, and they ask for money for it. But it's not something the community has any interest in at all. I'm like, where's the data that says the community wants this? In one case, we actually had one of these big health clinic things that you're hearing about, like a free dental clinic or whatever. We had a big clinic, and they collected exit surveys from the people who took advantage of that and said, what are you interested in? And so this church comes to us with a request for funding for this idea to teach this really, I think it's good, but it's way off on the edge of most people's consciousness when it comes to health. They're like, yeah, we want to do this. And so I just said, I asked our health ministries coordinator, I'm like, is there data in the surveys that says this is what people want to learn? And they're like, nope. So we just said no, because there's no interest in and we're not going to spend money if there's no interest. So. You got it. I think to not to be too hard on us, because as a pastor I've done this. If I knew when I was pastoring last what I know now, what I've learned since Maldenburn, I would do things so differently. But a lot of times as Adventists, we've kind of approached our communities with kind of this. We look at them and we say, oh, we know what you need. Come on over to our place and we'll give it to you, right? And so what we're talking about is actually going to the community and saying, what do you need? And how could we help? And not everything that they need can we do anything about, but some things we can. And so that's kind of where you have those conversations. So I'm as I've been listening today, some of you've got some contacts. So I think you've got contacts. Is the Meals on Wheels guy? Is that who you're? Yep. So that's a great, and you want to talk about a huge need? We've got this aging population in our rural communities who want to age in place, but they can't. And they hit a certain place where they can't keep up with their yard. They can't take care of their roof. They can't rebuild the stairs, the deck. They can't paint, all that. And so all of a sudden, they're faced with having to sell their homes just because they can't keep up with maintenance. That's where community friends rolling in and saying, hey, we could help, can really make a difference. Here's something else you could think about. So one of the seminars that I'm working on putting together, and if you guys want me to come back, I'll do a Friday afternoon Sabbath training day with you that begins at Town Hall, meeting your mayor and your town clerk. And I'll set that up for you. But one of the seminars I'm excited about is to help churches begin to think of resources that are beyond this group right here. For instance, the way we got our foot into TICO was Pathfinders. Pathfinders can come to Goldendale. You could host Teen Mission Adventure here. You know how much those kids get done? We have about 80 teenagers, and we bring in contractors and professionals that know what they're doing, and then we give them a crew of kids. It's ridiculous. They have roofed homes. They split last year. I think their biggest project was a wood splitting project. They did like 23 cords of wood they split. It was a record for TMA. Anyway, it's incredible what they can do, and that's one of your resources because you're part of Upper Columbia Conference. So you could have them come. There's other resources like that. Maranatha, I mean, you could ask and say, hey, we got this really big need, and that might be something Maranatha would say, hey, yeah, we'll get a group together and come help. So don't feel like everything you dream you have to do with the people sitting in the pews. Also, you got a bunch of talented neighbors here in town, many of whom would love to be a part of making this a better place to live, and some of whom actually need volunteer hours as part of their job. In TICO, we're in conversation with the public school about getting the public school kids released to work with Upper Columbia Academy kids on Hope Task Force days because the public school kids have to get a certain number of volunteer hours every school year. And the town thinks that their kids would be better for working with our kids, and we happen to think our kids would be better for working with theirs. So, any other questions? Okay. Let me change slide decks real quick. Okay. We're going to go fast because a lot of this we've been bouncing around with story time, so a lot of this you've already heard, but let's just wade through this real fast. Listening to community leaders. That picture flying by, yeah. It's our food co-op in the Academy greenhouse, which just makes me happy. So this is a quote from our town clerk in one of our little towns in our conference talking about Pathfinders. Let me just start out by saying this. If you ever get the chance to have a group come into your community to do volunteer work that bring their own experts, food, tools, chaperones, insurance, this is the group that you want. The Pathfinders from Upper Columbia Conference have been coming to Fairfield for several years. That's the email that my town clerk sent out to all her colleagues looking for projects that ultimately opened a door for us in TICO. I have multiple quotes like this from town clerks on the Palouse that we've served who've posted on Facebook and different places, which is super cool. So anytime we get out and serve, we just have lots of fun. It's one of the things. Somebody came up to me after a presentation and they just looked at me privately and they said, "So what do you think? Is there hope for our church?" And I thought that was a pretty good question. Is there hope for our church? And I said, and they weren't talking about their congregation. They were talking about the church, the Adventist church. And I said, well, that depends. I said, if your hope is focused on people, the answer is no. If your hope is focused on Jesus, the answer is yes. And then we talked about where we see hope in the people part of the church. And in Upper Columbia Conference, we really believe, it's why we're all in. It's why we've raised almost $1.8 million to give away. We're all in on the idea that when people who have differing opinions on the Trinity or Trump take up rakes and shovels and hammers side by side, they find themselves finding common ground, laughing, sharing purpose, and they find that they actually are on the same team. That's why we're all in on service, because it does something for us. Do we want to impact our neighbors and our communities? Absolutely. But the community we want to impact most is the churches and schools of Upper Columbia Conference, and we believe this is a path forward. So let's talk about, we're just going to fly through this. Community leaders are super helpful because they can help us identify the community needs more precisely. Even our best tools from the outside looking into a town, it's hard to figure out what the town actually needs, right? Or a county or a community. But the people who live there, who work in the offices, they hear stuff every day. They're interacting with residents, and they can help us. Leaders can help our impact go further faster. I have seen this over and over. I can get way more traction in a community if I've got town hall working with me than if I just walk in and try to do it on my own, right? We're going to go just jump. So look at the bottom right hand. I want you guys to ask this question. What if we became the first number leaders called when they had a problem that needed solving in their town? It's happening, actually. After we worked in Malden for several years, a Seventh-day Adventist engineer who was continuing to work through his firm with that community as they rebuilt, he reached out to me and said, hey, can you join me for a Zoom meeting on this date? And I said, sure. And I get on the meeting, and there's him and there's this lady. And this lady is a grant writer who had been writing grants for the town of Malden to help them rebuild. And she said, I got a grant from the American Red Cross for $700,000 to build 7 new homes for people that had lost their homes. Now, that's not much of a house if you know anything about construction prices today. However, the Amish were coming from Montana to provide all the labor. So that's half, poof, gone, right? And they're little, but they're really well built because the Amish built them. So she said, something happened, and we only built 6 houses. So I'm sitting on a pile of money, and I reached out to Red Cross and said, could we use that extra money to landscape around these houses so like they're done when they finish? And they said yes. And she said, I immediately thought, we need the Pathfinders. Right? That could be your church. That could be your church. With a few years of dedicated relationship building and effort on your part, it could become true that in Goldendale, Washington, when they have a need, they could say, you know what? The Adventists will make this happen for us. So how do we bridge the gap? Here's 5 steps to start connecting with your community leaders. We're going to go quick. We'll be done. You've already seen this picture. Number 1, identify who the actual leaders are in your area. So you guys know this is true. It's true in politics. It's true in the church. It's just true of human nature. There are people who hold positions, and there are people who are just leaders because they're leaders, right? So you need to work on finding both. Oftentimes in our communities, the people in the positions are actually leaders, especially those clerks. I keep coming back to them. Those usually women. My clerk is now a guy. But they're amazing, and they know tons of stuff and tons of people. So, number 2, this is where when you form that little group here in your church and say, hey, we want to serve, you can kind of look around and say, what skills do we have, right? So you might have a painter, a plumber, you might have a drywaller, you might have somebody that's got a high-octane wood splitter, all things. In this case, my friend Andrew is a really good small engines mechanic. And one of the things people lost when Malden burned is they lost their lawnmowers. So you know what Pathfinders did? We had people donate mowers that weren't running, and we went through the best of them and got them running, and we gave them to people who lost their mowers in fire. Right? And that's what we were doing right here is Andrew is helping because I'm worthless on that, although I learned quite a bit from him. So, and here's some things, go back, sorry. Skills, volunteers. Sometimes they just need bodies, right, to make an event happen. Sometimes they just need people. Facilities. You have this beautiful facility. How many days a week is this empty? Yeah. 6? How about your fellowship hall? How many days a week is it empty? 3 or 4? Okay, so it's getting some use. Okay? Are there organizations in Goldendale who could use these spaces that you have? Perfect. There you go. You're already doing it. At our conference office, we host on a regular basis the emergency management leaders for the counties around us. Once a month, they get together for training and stuff, and they do it in our office because we have this beautiful conference room space, and we make it available to them at no cost. Sometimes you can offer money to make something happen in the community, right? We typically see the high school kids raising money for this or that, and we just drive by, right? At least I do. Why? Well, they're not our school. What if we did that different? What if we helped? And here's a big one that we don't think about as churches. Now, here in Goldendale, your resources are a little different, but everybody in the community is trying to get the word out for whatever they're doing, and we can help, right? We can, even if we just say, oh, yeah, we'll put that poster up on our church bulletin board. We'll hang it up at our school. We'll send something home with our kids from school. We can help with promotion for other things. Now, I'm not suggesting you should promote, Harry Scary Alley on Halloween. No, I'm not suggesting you should do that. I wouldn't. But there's a lot of things we can support and be a part of our community by promoting it. Ask the leaders. What do you see? What do you see as the biggest need? What's happening in this picture behind me is a direct result of me listening to a community leader. So in our community there in Spangle, there's the Adventist Church and the Community Church. And they have started working together over the years, largely because Pastor Lonnie at the Community Church is a really great partner. He's just wonderful and delightful. He knows all the Adventists, all of us. And we know him and we love him. So we do Christmas together, our two churches. And so a couple years ago, I was at the Community Church for the Christmas Eve program that our two churches do together. And Pastor Lonnie and I got talking after church. And I said, Lonnie, Pathfinders are coming back to UCA this May. And we'd be happy to do a food drive for the food pantry, which is in the basement of the Community Church. Adventists are involved with it, but it's in the Community Church basement because their church is in town. And I said, we'd be happy to do a food drive. And he said, that'd be great, but what we really need and what we can't get anywhere is soap and shampoo and we call it the bare necessities. He said, we can't get that. And it's true. I went online. I did a little research. It's a thing all across the country. You can't get this stuff with food stamps if you're low income. The food pantries can't get it from Second Harvest or any of their food suppliers, and so there's no pipeline for the things like this: soap, shampoo, conditioner, toothpaste, shave cream, all that stuff. There's no pipeline. And so because I listened to a community leader, we did, between our Pathfinder Club, the elementary school, and the academy, we did a big drive, and we gathered enough bare necessities to supply 4 food pantries in our area, from Spokane out onto the Palouse. And that was just one club. So when we ask, what do you need? All of a sudden, I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know that was a need. I would have never known if I hadn't listened to Pastor Lonnie. And then we can say to these community leaders, hey, we'd like to help. We think we can do these kind of things. How can we be a part of what you're working on that would really benefit our community together, and start a conversation about what partnering might look like? And it's amazing how fast they start to recognize that you mean it. All you have to do is deliver, right? So don't overpromise and underdeliver. Do the reverse. But amazing things can happen. For instance, and I'm winding down, in Malden, we've been working in Malden for 4.5 years. And to be honest, what we have done, as far as what we've actually done, is not a lot. Other organizations have done far more. Other organizations have given way more money. But everybody in Malden knows the Adventists because the kids were the ones that did it. And they just are blown away because of those kids showing up and serving. So early on, as one of my colleagues and I are meeting with the town leaders of this little town that had been burned, we walked out of a meeting with the mayor and in their temporary town hall that they had at the time, and we looked at each other, and I said, I think I know you well enough that we're on the same page here, but I said, I just want to make sure that we're clear before we move forward in serving this town. I said, if we build, so at the time, Pathfinders were designing a new park for Malden because their park had burned, the whole thing. And the kids said, they need a new park. That's what would help that town grow back. If they want young families, they need a park. And so these kids, God made it a way for these kids, like engineering firms donated their time. We had professional plans, 2 options for a new park for Malden by the end of the school year. These kids did it. But I walked out of town hall with my friend and colleague, and I said, I just want to make sure we're both on the same page. If we build this park, it will never be called Pathfinder Park. There will never be a sign or a plaque or anything here that says, from your friends, the Adventists. And she said, nope. I said, if we do this, this is simply a gift from Jesus to Malden through us. Yep. Okay. So we moved ahead on that understanding. And some of you may be going, well, why would you do that? Aren't you selling out on the mission? Let me tell you what happened. We moved ahead on those terms. When we started serving in that community, we didn't build a park. Avista's paying for the new park. And the plans changed. But it started with our plans, actually. That's where it began. But as time went on, they got a new mayor, a new clerk, and we built relationship with them. We worked with them, and they'd say, hey, could you help us with this? And we would. Could you do this? And we would. Could we do that? No, but UCA could do that. And we just kept showing up. And one day, I get an email from Mickey. Mickey is the town clerk in Malden. She's a volunteer. Mickey used to be the mayor of Rockford. She's on the rock. Nobody becomes a politician on the Palouse unless they go through Mickey. She's a powerful individual politically and everything. And she's a believer. She's delightful. I love her. And one day I get an email from Mickey, who lives in Rockford, which is like 40 minutes away from Malden on the other side of my hometown. And she said, Richie, the church I attend is a tiny little church. I think it's a Presbyterian church, I think. And she said, we have a problem. We're so small that we don't have a Sunday school teacher. And the people who could teach Sunday school really want to be upstairs in the Sunday school class for the adults. But we need somebody to teach the youth. And I finally hit me, Richie, we need somebody who goes to church on Saturday to come be our youth leader on Sunday. Could you help us find a youth leader for our youth group on Sundays? How many opportunities like that have you had in your lifetime? When somebody from a church in town says, would you take over our youth group? Right? Why did we get that opportunity? Because we showed up over and over with kids. Yep. And she knew what I did for work, and she knew I liked kids. Oh, there's that picture again. So that's another one. When they ask, say yes as much as you can. Obviously, we're not suggesting that you go compromise your values. Nope. But anytime you can. In the case of Malden, they said, can you build clothing racks? We said, yes. They said, hey, we've leased a house for the Amish builders to stay in, but we need help cleaning it and moving furniture that's been donated in so they have a place to stay. Can you help with that? We said, yes. They said, we've got a big a pile of tires. Can you help us load and move them? We said, yes. They said, hey, we've got these 6 houses that need landscaping done, and we need to move gravel and landscape supplies and place it around the houses. We need to paint the outside of the houses. Can you do that? And we said, yes. We just said yes and yes and yes. And by the way, I didn't do any of this. We had Hope Task Force from UCA, Pathfinder Crews. We had all these different groups coming in. We coordinated and made it happen. I did help with the Amish house. We went recently, last summer, Medical Lake had a big fire, and we went recently as an office team. We said, what do you need? And they said, well, we got this park we'd like to have cleaned up. But they always underestimate what we can do. It took us about 15 minutes to do the job that they'd given us for the afternoon. And so we said, hey, that was fun. What else? So we ended up doing this little park, and then we went over to Town Hall, and we landscaped around Town Hall. And I'm telling you, every time the mayor sees us, she lights up because she knows now, and now she's emailing Patty Marsh all the time. Hey, could you guys help with this? How about this? We have a family that needs this. Could you help? And so we're building another relationship in another community where we don't even have a church, by the way. But that will change. Another community, they had a parade on Sabbath. When I was a kid, Pathfinders used to be in parades on Sabbath, and then something changed, and we decided that wasn't Sabbathy. Well, we joined the parade. But some of our clubs felt like, marching in the parade didn't feel Sabbathy. But they did like the idea of passing out water bottles with our Hope Builders label on them. And so it was a really hot day, and we were super popular. This Pathfinders walked the parade route with wagons full of ice-cold water while several hundred Pathfinders marched, and several other clubs went out and knocked on doors and invited people to VBS and different things like that. But we blitzed 2 entire communities that Sabbath. Be unique. Yeah, here we go. This is our parting thought. Most people approach leaders wanting something, right? Hey, could you help me with this? Or I'm so ticked off about that. If you walk into any of these leaders' offices or space and say, we'd like to know how we can help, you're going to be the most unique person they've met all week, and that will be delightful. Be partners. They're looking for solutions to problems. We can help. We can help find solutions. We can be solutions to problems. And you might be amazed. You guys might leave today thinking that you're going to start helping people paint their homes or change oil. And it may be that a year from now, we'll be sitting here and you're going to be telling me about how God led you to lead the charge to end drug abuse and trafficking in Goldendale, Washington. Who knows where God may lead you. But when you start, what's that? Well, that is one approach. After your first round, you won't be effective anymore. But anyway, be generous. Give generously with no need to take credit. Here's the deal, guys. You don't need to put little cards on whatever you do that say, from your friends, the Adventists. It's Goldendale. They know. They know. Your neighbors know who you are. When you show up and do stuff, they know. And word will get out. So don't feel like you need to take credit. God will bring it in his time. You just be smiling faces. People are going to ask. I never lead. I don't feel the need to. And yet all my neighbors know. And every community that we go into, they know. Right? You don't have to tell them. They'll figure it out because they want to know, who are those people? Right? We went from camp meeting this summer. We drove down to Tico, and we were cleaning up, doing a bunch of pruning and cleaning around an old house. And a neighbor who didn't know us at all walked off the street and said, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And they said, "Oh, we're just taking care of this yard. Can I help?" "Yep." And he worked with us the rest of the day, right? People want to be a part of that. They're going to figure out who you are. That's it. So here's our review. Number 1, identify who are the leaders, clarify what do we bring to it, ask what do you need, offer, here's how we think we can help, and then deliver, do it. There you go. Any questions? That's a good question. So the question is, I said that if I were pastoring again, I would do it differently than how I did before. So I planted a church. My wife and I planted a church in Spokane, and we did a lot of really creative outreach things. Like we did a peanut carnival for the community kids, set up all these games and stuff in the parking lot, brought in people that do kid photo ID, so like mom and dad could take their kids over, get a picture taken. They'd give them a whole little kit, so if something horrible ever happened to their kid, they'd have an ID kit to give to the police. We had another organization come in that gave away bicycle helmets. We did cool stuff, and we got precious little attendance and even less traction. Why? Because we looked at the community and we said, oh, this would be cool, and we did it. We never went to them and said, what do you need, and met the need. We worked backwards, and we worked by ourselves. So instead of getting the wind of town hall or whatever governance there was behind us, we were just out there paddling our canoe, doing our thing, bucking the wind, and didn't even realize there was another way to do it. I didn't know a single community leader in all the years that I led that church plant. So that's what I mean I'd do different. Now I would come in, I'd get to know you all, and then I'd be like, all right, who are the leaders in town? And I'd start making friends and taking you all to do the same, or encouraging you to, who's got connections? And we would start working with our community and saying, all right, we want to be a part of this community in a meaningful way, and doors will open. So that's what I'd change.
We have a guy in our church, Brad, and I can't believe he's not here. He has a good painter. Well, obviously, we need to find somebody who needs something painted.
Yep.
And so I tell him, no, what we have to do, we have to get out into the community and we have to begin to talk to people and find out what is needed around their community, around their neighbors. You come and you say to us, no, we need to concentrate on finding out from the leaders in the community what the real needs are. And something that we can then take these talented people and put to work to help meet those needs.
And I think there's not a wrong or right or wrong way necessarily, but here's a couple of things to think about when you consider, should we be the ones building the connections or should we work through town hall? Here's a couple of things in favor of working through town hall. Number one, when we go out into the community and we knock on doors, let's say, and I do this, I drive through towns and I'm like, oh man, if we had a paint crew here, we could transform this, or we need a lot of roofing in this town or whatever. But here's what I don't know. I don't know, is that a private individual who is just struggling to keep up for health, medical, financial, whatever reasons, or is that somebody who's renting from a lousy landlord, right? I am not in the business of taking care of properties for lousy landlords. But you know who knows? Town hall. They know. And so when I walk into town hall, I'm very plain. I'm like, I am not here to clean up after your deadbeat landlords. So don't give me those projects. I don't find a single project in TECO, not one. Town hall finds them all. They give me a list of names, and here's what they need, and they've already vetted them and say, yeah, these are people who actually need help. And then they know the stories, right? Oh yeah, like I looked at my partner Eliza a few weeks ago and I said, yeah, Kathy, she seemed like I'm not sure why we're helping her. You know, her house looks pretty nice, yard's pretty nice. She's like, oh, let me tell you, Kathy's got some massive health issues going on. Oh, I would never know that, and I would have never knocked on Kathy's door because her house looks beautiful, but she needed our help, and she was delighted to get it, right? Another house that we worked on a few weeks ago, also the yard, perfect. You know what she wanted done? She wanted us to power wash her siding and wash her windows and power wash her deck. And I'm like, really? I mean, like, come on. I'm giving you a whole crew of kids here. That seems like, maybe we could help somebody who needs it more. Until I find out she's in her second round of battling cancer. She can't do everything she wants. And you know what? Having her place looks nice means a lot to her. And the day that we were there, she said, I won't be there when you guys get here. I got a medical appointment. Just worked out. I think it was God set it up. I just happened to be, because we had another project about a half a block away from her house, just happened to be there helping them kind of get squared away and going. And she drives up, and I walk down to her car because she's stuck behind one of our buses. And I said, how'd it go? And she starts telling me, here's what the doctor's saying today. Well, she didn't say it. She's dying. She's not going to make it. Did it matter that we were there? Yeah. But I would have never picked that house. Never. But town hall knew. Eliza knew. So, and here's the other thing. Look, a lot of these little towns, here's what I'm learning. Politics. You don't have to like them, but they're here, right? And small town politics are nasty. So, like I mentioned this morning, there's a town right now I drive by because they're a mess, and I'm just letting things cool down, right? When we can, as a church, give community leaders the credibility of whatever it is we contribute and be okay letting them take credit because we're working with them, it lifts them up. We're actually affecting political climate, right? We're facilitating community change and growth as the church when we work with them. None of that happens if we go do it all ourselves. No, good point. Good point. Now, when you work with town hall, they've got some things they need to ask. And you can say yes. They need to say, do you have insurance? And your answer is yes. And if they say, well, we need a $2 million rider for you guys to be able to do anything in town, no problem. You just send me an email. I'll get it for you. Not a problem. Good, this is fun. All right, but you guys are looking tired. Potluck was so good, and now we're all sleepy, so I need to let you go. Any other questions, though? I don't want to leave. I can come back if you would like. You've got my email. I'll come back and do our Friday Sabbath training where we'll do a lot of this, but I'm putting together like 20-minute rapid-paced presentations, and then some time for you to apply and talk, and then 20 minutes, apply and talk, 20 minutes, and I'll bring our prayer ministries coordinator and teach you how to do the prayer blankets, although it looks like you're already doing them. You doing prayer blankets? Yes? Somebody? No? Prayer blankets. Is that what that is? They're just blankets. Okay. Well, we need to upgrade them to prayer blankets. They're really fun. Anyway, so if you'd like me to come, and it'd be, Friday night, Friday afternoon, we'll go to town hall together, some of us, and then meet Friday night and all day Sabbath. And I'd be happy to do that. So no pressure. I won't be offended, but you got my email, so we're probably looking into next year at this point to schedule that, but happy to do that. So that is another option. And I'd love to send you some money. So start dreaming, you guys, and praying. I feel it. I like it. Well, I do know that the powers that are they're working on it. I actually heard something this last week in the office, so it's not going to go as fast as you would like, I'm sure, but they are thinking this through. One of the things, as you know, that's tricky for you guys is it's a long ways from here to any other church in Upper Columbia. In Oregon, no problem, but we're not in Oregon Conference, and so far they're not. They might be happy to give us a few churches right now, but that would be more of a garage sale type thing. So anyway, I will pray about that, actually. And by the way, thank you for being a safe church for pastors. I happen to love Michael and Mariah very deeply and personally, and it warmed my heart to hear you all praying for Gemma still. So thank you. Yay. Well, that's the kind of churches we want to put pastors in. We have some that eat pastors for dinner, and we don't really feel so good about that, but that makes me happy. So anyway, eating, I wasn't going to go there, but I know. I'm glad to hear that we're in a different space, so yay. All right, anything else? Okay, so I'll pray for you. Here's something you can pray for us. Did one of you say that you're on executive committee? You're on executive committee? Good for you. That's a long drive to committee meetings. So you're aware, and I don't know if how much they say you can share, but it's budget season at the conference office right now. And for lots of reasons, it's tough. And our administrative team, the pressure is on, and we're trying to be financially responsible, and that means hard decisions. So, so pray for wisdom for our leadership at the office. This is not an easy time to lead the conference, especially financially. So, I've been around long enough. I believe God's going to take care of us, but this is a tough go right now. So, okay, you raised your hand again. It's already gone. Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay. All right. Let's pray. And I can't wait to hear what God's going to do here, you guys. Father in heaven, thank you so much for these smiling faces and good questions and just thinking about how to make a difference in Goldendale. Lord, thank you for what you're doing in our school here. Just so exciting. Help us to really think about how to capitalize on that. It's a great place to begin. How do we capitalize on the connections we have right there? And just pray that you will give wisdom and energy, bring the right people and the right connections in the community. Lord, that this church will become a significant influence for good right here in their community, their town, their county. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.